Dear students, in this video I am going to tell about the antihistamine agents. This video includes all the content which is important for the examination purpose. See, as its name indicate, antihistaminic means it will do the reverse of histamine, or it antagonize the effect of histamines. Okay, so let's discuss the definition. What is the definition? Drugs, as you can see, drugs that antagonize the effect of histamine or they inhibit the histamine release from the cell. So now generally histamine, when you have any allergy or some injury or some foreign particles will enter inside our body, so it will trigger some response, some immunogenic response. In that, some inflammatory mediators are released. In that inflammatory mediator, histamine is one of the inflammatory mediator, prostaglandin is another. So in other chapters you will study about prostaglandin and other inflammatory mediators, but here we have to discuss about the histamine. So histamine are like allergic mediators, or they increases the allergy. See, whenever we have some kind of foreign particle enter inside our body, so some responses trigger inside the body. So in that response, one of the thing is the release of histamine. So we can say the histamine provoke the allergic reactions in the body. So let's see. Histamines generally they are the mediator of hypersensitivity, allergy, or during some tissue injuries. Here you can see the histamines, they are the mediator of hypersensitivity, means the body became sensitive to some other foreign particles or some other outside thing, or microbes or pollen grain. So basically the histamines, they are the mediator which can cause allergies in the body. So here you can see generally histamines, they are known as tissue amine, and they release during hypersensitivity due to allergy or due to some tissue injury, or during the inflammation when you see the redness, swelling inside the body, or something appear on the skin. When you have an injury on your skin, then also you can see the redness and swelling and some heat like sensation is there. So in that case the histamine and other inflammatory mediators, they are present. So we can say that histamines are the mediators of hypersensitivity during allergies, during tissue injuries and inflammation. So now let's discuss about some of the chemistry of histamine. So basically histamine is beta imidazoyl ethamine. So here you can see the basic nucleus is beta imidazoyl ethamine. So that is the nucleus. And how the histamine synthesis takes place in the cell. So let's see the histamine synthesis, how it takes place. So here histamine is synthesized from the amino acid that is called as histidine. So histidine in the presence of decarboxylase enzyme is converted into histamine. See, histamine here mast cell is written because histamines, they are mostly stored in mast cell. Okay, so the storage cell for histamine is mast cell, and this histamine can easily break down, metabolize, or you can say decompose in the presence of diamine oxidase and methyl transferase. So we can say that this histamine can easily degrade or oxidize, and it is converted into imidazole acetic acid or N-methyl histamine. So these are the degraded or metabolic product of histamine. See, now let's discuss the brief introduction about histamine. As we already discussed that histamine, they are stored in the mast cell. See, so here you can see the histamine stored in mast cell. Majority of histamines, they are stored in mast cell. We can say that around 95 to 98% histamines, they are stored in mast cell. But some portion of histamines, they are also stored in some of the non-mast cells. Okay, so here you can see the mast cells which are present in skin, gastric and intestinal mucosa, lungs or liver, or in placenta. There the histamines are stored. Okay, and next example, some of the histamines, they are stored in non-mast cell which are present in brain, epidermis and growing region of the body. And these histamines, they are also present in the blood venoms. The poisonous snakes have the venom. So in these venoms also the histamines are present. And these histamines, they are orally inactive in nature. Okay. So let's see the brief introduction about how this histamine work in the body. See, generally histamine, it bind with histaminic receptor. As we know that these inflammatory mediator, they are very specific in their nature. So they will bind with their specific receptor. Okay. So here histamine will bind with only histaminic receptor, which can produce some physiological change or some response in the body. So this is what happening in when histamine it will release. It will bind with histaminic receptor. It will produce some physiological change or some reaction in the body. See how many types of histaminic receptor. Till now we found there are 4 types of histaminic receptors. H1, H2, H3 and H4. So this H4 is the recent discovered histamine receptor. So total we have 4 types of histamine receptor where this histamine can bind. These receptors, they are present at different site of the body or different sites in the organ, and that is why they produce the different effects. So here this is the table about the receptors, the type of receptors and the distribution in the body. So basically this explains that how many types of histaminic receptors are there, what is their nature and where they found in the body. So here you can see the H1 receptor. It is the G protein coupled receptor. It is present in smooth muscles of intestine and uterus. It is also present in endothelium, nerve ending, ganglionic cell and adrenal medulla of brain. So these are the sites where this H1 receptor is present. Okay. Second is H2. H2 is also G protein coupled receptor and it is present in gastric gland, blood vessels, heart, uterus and brain. The third type is H3 receptor, that is GI-GO protein coupled receptor. It is present in brain in presynaptic cleft. It is present in lungs, spleen, gastric mucosa, skin ileum and blood vessel. So these are the locations where H3 receptor is present. And the last is H4, that is also GI-GO protein coupled receptor and it is present in intestine and brain. So basically the antihistaminic drugs, they will bind with these receptor to reverse or antagonize the effect of histamine. Okay. So in your syllabus, H1 and H2 receptor antagonists are mentioned. So we are going to discuss about these H1 antagonist and H2 antagonist drugs. And most important thing, these histamine generally they cause vasoconstriction in blood vessels. We can say when histamine release in the body, then they causes the vasoconstriction in blood vessels. In stomach, they increase the gastric acid secretion and they cause the hypersecretion in gastric glands. In lungs also they cause the constriction, as well as in brain the neurosensitivity will increase. So like this, these histamine, they produce different effect on the body organs. Now let's discuss about the H1 histaminic receptor and H2 histaminic receptor. So basically this H1 histamine receptor, they play a very important role in allergic reaction and their response occur through peripheral nervous system, especially in the smooth muscle. They causes the smooth muscle contraction. They also cause vasoconstriction and the activation of H1 receptor cause blood dilation and increase the blood vessel permeability. So these are the effect when the H1 receptor get activated. And they also stimulate the sensory nerves in airways and they can cause the bronchoconstriction. So these are the effect of H1 histaminic receptor. And They also promote the chemotaxis of eosinophils and leads to the nasal congestion, sneezing and rhinorrhea. So basically when you have a problem, especially in the cold time, the nasal blockage is there, continuous sneezing is there. So this may be due to the histaminic response. Next is on activation in cerebral cortex, the H1 receptor, they inhibit the potassium channel in neuronal cells. So they also inhibit the potassium channel in neuronal cells, and they also cause the depolarization of neuron and increase the neuronal excitation, and they also increase the calcium ion influx in the mast cells. So these are some brief introduction about the H1 histamine receptor. Next is brief introduction about H2 receptor. They are generally found in parietal cells in the stomach, heart, and some part in immune cells and vascular smooth muscle. But most of the H2 receptor, they are present in stomach. On activation, they causes vasodilation and release of gastric acid required for digestion. Yes, they play very important role in digestion of food because they increase the acid secretion, which is necessary for the breakdown of the components present in the food which we consume. On activation of basophil neutrophils, they stimulate the suppressor T cells and lymphocyte proliferation and natural T cell activity. So basically they enhance the activity of natural killer T cells. The combined activation of H1 and H2 will stimulate the swelling of nasal airways, and they also increase the CMP level and gastric acid secretion and increases the capillary permeability. So this is the brief introduction about H2 receptor, that how they work and where they are present. That in the syllabus H1 antagonist and H2 antagonist drugs were mentioned. So first we are going to discuss the chemical classification of H1 antagonist drugs. So here you can see the classification of H1 antagonist drugs. So this is the chemical classification of H1 antagonist drug. See, the H1 antagonist drugs, they are classified into first generation and second generation drugs. Generally, the first generation antihistaminic drugs, they are sedative in nature. They induce sleep and dizziness in the patient. When the patient, they will take these medicines, they will feel dizziness, calmness and sleepiness type. While the second generation antihistaminic drugs, they don't have sedative action. They are non-sedative antihistaminic. The example for first generation antihistaminic drugs which are sedative in nature, it is further classified into amino alkyl ethers, which is also known as ethanolamines. So here the examples are diphenylhydramine hydrochloride, and you can see their chemical structure also. Second example is dimenhydrinate. Again the chemical structures are mentioned here for these compounds. And the third example is doxylamine succinate. So this is the drugs which are present under the category of amino alkyl ethers or ethanolamines. Okay, examples diphenhydramine, dimenhydrinate, doxylamine, and their chemical structures are also there. So you can see their chemical structures. Again it is in further continuation the same. It is again in the continuation of amino alkyl ether drugs. So another example is clemastine fumarate. You can see the chemical structure also. Next example is diphenylpyrrolene hydrochloride. See, all these chemical classification I designed on the basis of your syllabus. So here in the syllabus these drugs were mentioned. So we should learn the chemical structures of these drugs because as per the examination purpose these structures are very important. So here this is the first subcategory. Now second subcategory is ethylene diamines, and the example is triplenamine hydrochloride, and you can see the chemical structure of triplenamine hydrochloride. Next subcategory is piperazine cyclazene's derivative. Example is chlorcyclazine hydrochloride. So this is the chemical structure of chlorcyclazine hydrochloride. Another example is meclizine hydrochloride. Here you can see the structure of meclizine hydrochloride. Another example is buclizine hydrochloride. So this is the third example in piperazine cyclazine derivatives. Buclizine, buclizine, buclizine hydrochloride. So these are the chemical structure for third category, that is piperazine cyclazine. Now the fourth subcategory is propyl amines, which are also known as monoaminopropyl or alkyl amine derivatives. So examples are chlorpheniramine maleate. You can see the structure of chlorpheniramine, and this is the maleate, malic acid. And next example is trifluoridine hydrochloride. So you can see the structure of trifluoridine hydrochloride. And third example is phenindamine tartrate. So this is the structure of phenindamine, and this is the tartric acid. When they form a complex, then it is called as phenindamine tartrate. Okay, so this is the fourth subcategory of first generation antihistaminic drug. The next is phenothiazine derivatives. Phenothiazine derivatives. The next subcategory is phenothiazine derivative. Examples are promethazine hydrochloride. So this is the structure of promethazine hydrochloride. So this is the structure of promethazine hydrochloride. And the second example is trimiprazine tartrate. The second example is trimiprazine tartrate, and this is the structure of trimiprazine tartrate. You can see the structure. This is the tartric acid. Generally, this type of complex are used to increase the solubility of drugs. So here this is the fifth subcategory. Next category is dibenzocycloheptanes or dibenzocycloheptanes. So this is the next category F, dibenzocycloheptanes or dibenzocycloheptanes. Example is cyproheptadine hydrochloride. So this is the structure of cyproheptadine hydrochloride. This is the first example in this category, cyproheptadine hydrochloride. And next example is azatidine maleate. So this is the structure of azatidine maleate. This is the malic acid and this is the azatidine nucleus. So this is the second example, azatidine maleate. So the first generation antihistaminic drugs we discussed, and now next come to the second generation antihistamine drugs. So the first generation drugs, they are basically more sedative in nature. But this second generation antihistamine drugs, they are non-sedative. In second generation antihistamine drug, the first example is estimizole. So this is the structure of estimizole. Okay. So this is the structure estimizole. Next example is cetirizine. You can see this is the structure of cetirizine. The structure of cetirizine. Another example is loratadine. Loratadine. So here you can see the structure of loratadine. This is the structure of loratadine. Another example is levocetirizine. So this is the structure of levocetirizine. Levocetirizine. This is the structure of levocetirizine. As you can see the structure of levocetirizine, this is the chloro group and this is CH2OCH2. This arrow indicate just this is the structure of levocetirizine. It doesn't represent any kind of bond. Simply I made this red color arrow. So this is the structure of levocetirizine. So after second generation drug, some more categories of drugs are included in antihistaminic drugs, which are given in combination to enhance the antihistaminic activity. See, like here, the another category is mast cell stabilizer. In your syllabus, it was mentioned as cromolyn sodium. So in your syllabus it is there, cromolyn sodium, which is a mast cell stabilizer. So this is the structure of cromolyn sodium. You can see it is a complex. Here carboxylic group form a complex with this sodium ion. So that is why it is cromolyn sodium, a sodium salt which can increase the aqueous solubility of the drug. Another example is NIDO, N-E-D-O, nidocronyl disodium. Nidocronyl disodium. This is also mast cell stabilizer. And the third example is lodoxamide tromethamine. Lodoxamide tromethamine. So these three are the example of mast cell stabilizer. Another some recent antihistaminic drugs like ketotifen fumarate. This ketotifen fumarate specially used for ophthalmic allergies, means allergies which are present in the eyes or which causes allergy in eyes. So for the allergic treatment in eyes, this ketotifen fumarate is used as a ophthalmic solution. So this is the classification of H1 antihistaminic drugs. Now let's see the mechanism of H1 antihistaminic drugs. So basically you can see a diagram of mast cell. As I told you that the histamine generally they are stored in mast cell. Okay, so how this histamine they affect this mast cell and how the histaminic activity triggers in the body. So you can see this thing in the mechanism. See here you can see this is the mast cell layer. Okay, this is the upper layer. Okay, where you can see various receptors are present. Okay, so these are the various receptor indicated by red color, that is Fc epsilon receptor present in mast cell surface. Epsilon receptor 1. This red color they are the receptor Fc epsilon receptor 1. This is the name. Okay, so here at these receptor the Ig antibodies are present. You know the antigen antibodies reaction. Okay, so this is Ig antibodies which are present on the surface of mast cell, and this is antigen. Any immunogenic response or any foreign particle when they enter inside our body, or some allergic material when they enter inside our body, the antigens are produced, and the antigens they will bind with antibody. So that is called antigen antibody reaction. So here you can see when antigen bind with Ig antibody, that is the immunogenic response. Okay, so what happen, they activate this complex. This is your receptor, this is your antibody, and this is the antigen. Okay, so what happened, the transmembrane activation of tyrosine protein kinase. So when this antigen antibody they will bind at the surface of mast cell, there is a activation of tyrosine protein kinase. This tyrosine protein kinase they activate phospholipase C gamma. So this is the first step where the transmembrane activation of tyrosine protein kinase, which is written as TPRK, and this kinase activate the phospholipase C gamma. So here the phospholipase C gamma, it convert phosphatidyl inositol phosphate, which is known as PIP2, into inositol triphosphate, which is IP3. So it converts PIP2 into IP3. And what this IP3 do? It trigger the intracellular release of calcium ion. So this IP3 it trigger the intracellular release of calcium ion. And this calcium ion it induce the fusion of heparin containing granules with plasma membrane of mast cell. Basically, when the release of calcium ion takes place, these calcium ion they induce the fusion of heparin like pocket is there in which heparin bind with histamine. Basically, the charged histamine is present along with the heparin in that pocket. So this calcium ion, it induces the fusion of this heparin pocket containing histamine at this surface. Here you can see at this surface, this heparin with the histamine, it fused here, which is promoted by the calcium ion. So because when this heparin pocket, they come near this surface, the exocytosis of histamine takes place, means the release of histamine. So here you can see the pocket with heparin and histamine, when they fuse here at the end of the cell surface, the release of histamine takes place. And this histamine, it bind with H1 receptor present on the various cell and increases the vascular permeability. So again I am repeating, this calcium ion, it induces the fusion of heparin pocket containing histamine at the end surface of the cell. So this causes exocytosis or the release of histamine. So when histamine, it get released, it bind with H1 receptor present on the specific cell, and which increases the vascular permeability of the cell. Okay, so in this way the histamine was released and it bind with H1 receptor which is present on the various cell at specific organ, and which increases the vascular permeability of cell, and accumulation of fluid can take place in cell, due to which swelling will appear. So I hope now you understand that how this histamine work in the body. So now let's see that antihistaminic drugs, how they work. Now you have idea about that, how the histamine they released in the body. So the simple mechanism through which the antihistamine drugs they work is they prevent the binding of histamine with histaminic receptor. Simple. So they prevent the histamine to bind with H1 receptor on the cell. So when this histamine, it will not bind with H1 receptor, the receptor will not get activated and the vascular permeability will not increase. So there will be no allergic response, right? So the antihistaminic drugs generally you can say they competitively bind with H1 receptor. Instead of histamine, they bind on H1 receptor, or they prevent the binding of histamine with H1 receptor. So that is why these drugs are known as H1 receptor antagonist. Basically, they work on the receptor. Instead of histamine, they bind to the H1 receptor. So this is the mechanism of action of H1 antihistaminic drug, that here they will bind with H1 receptor, or they prevent the binding of histamine with H1 receptor. So this is the overall mechanism of action of H1 antihistamine drugs. Now let's see the SAR of H1 antihistaminic drug. SAR, what do you mean by SAR? SAR is structure activity relationship. See, as in the chemical classification you have seen many structure, and in those structures some common functional group they are continuously repeating. So this structure activity relationship study is simply when we correlate the structure with the biological activity of drug. So here in SAR study we select the common skeleton of the drug, means the functional group or the structure which is common in most of the derivatives, that we used to take it for SAR study. When we will modify the different functional group, how it will affect the activity of the drug. So here this is the common structure, general structure of antihistaminic drugs. Okay, so this is the alkyl chain. In N is the number of alkyl groups. This is N, tertiary nitrogen, R, R1, and here AR represent aromatic ring, first aromatic group, and second AR dash, second aromatic group. Okay, so this is aromatic group AR and this is second aromatic group, this is first R, alkyl group. This is R dash, this is R, and this is R dash. They both represent the alkyl group. So basically it is the tertiary amine. So this is the common structure of antihistamine drugs, H1 antihistamine drugs. Okay. So here how we will modify this structure to increase the activity. Okay. So this we are going to discuss in SAR. So the first point is about the aryl groups. Okay, so in aryl groups we can use phenyl or substituted phenyl ring or pyridyl ring. Here you can see the examples. These ring, if we will substitute in the place of this AR, aryl group or aromatic group, the antihistaminic activity will increase. That is the first point. If we replace this AR with phenyl, substituted phenyl pyridyl ring, the antihistaminic activity will increase. Now second point, that is for second aryl group or second aromatic group. If we will replace this second aryl group again with phenyl or 2-pyridyl or methyl aromatic ring, phenyl, substituted phenyl, 2-pyridyl ring or methyl aromatic group, then also the antihistaminic activity will increase. Now let's move to the X. X is the connecting structure. Here it is indicated by the X, which connect this alkyl chain tertiary amine with this aryl groups. Okay, so the connecting atom can be oxygen, carbon, nitrogen, aldehyde or CH. If we will use these groups or these groups are present as a connecting atom, then the activity of the compound will increase. So here X can be replaced with oxygen, carbon, nitrogen or aldehyde, CHO or CH. So this is our third point. Now next is about alkyl group N. N can be 2 carbon or 2 alkyl group, 2 carbon chain or like ethyl group or ethyl chain. So if here in place of N, if 2CH2CH2 group will be there, then also the antihistaminic activity will increase. But if further we will increase the carbon chain, means more than 2, then the activity will get decreased. So if 2 carbon chain is there or ethyl group is there, the activity will increase. But if propyl, butyl or more number of carbon chain, more than 2 carbon chain, then the activity will get decreased. Next point, this is the nitrogen. If nitrogen is tertiary amine, means both this R and R dash will be substituted by any other alkyl group. So if tertiary amine is present, it produces maximum antihistaminic activity. Okay. Sometimes in some structure the N is present in this form, this aromatic system, piperazine like, methyl piperazine like system, then also it will produce a good antihistaminic activity. So if here instead of this tertiary nitrogen, if this structure methyl piperazine structure is there, then also it will produce the antihistaminic activity. The last point, that is about R and R dash, they can be the methyl group to produce antihistaminic activity. If R and R dash is substituted with methyl group, they will produce the antihistaminic activity. So here you can see the synthesis of diphenhydramine hydrochloride. It is a H1 antagonist and this synthesis is mentioned in your syllabus. The mechanism of action is common for all the H1 antagonists. If in examination they will ask about the mechanism of action of specific H1 antagonist, so you can write the common mechanism of action which I explained earlier. Okay, so for this H1 antagonist drug, they have one common mechanism, that is they act on H1 histamine receptor. They prevent the binding of histamine with H1 receptor. Here you can see the synthesis where diphenyl methane brominated in the presence of K2CO3 and the diphenyl bromomethane is formed. After that it react with N-dimethyl ethanolamine. Again it react with N-dimethyl ethanolamine and it gives diphenhydramine. So here you have hydrochloride salt. So this diphenhydramine, when it react with HCl, it form diphenhydramine hydrochloride salt, and this salt formation will increase the aqueous solubility or water solubility of the drug. So this is the synthesis of diphenhydramine hydrochloride. Next synthesis is triprolidine hydrochloride, which is also H1 antagonist. So here 4-methyl acetophenone, formaldehyde and pyrrolidine are the initial substrate which undergoes condensation reaction. So here you can see the complete reaction. Next synthesis is promethazine, which is again H1 antagonist. Here you can see phenothiazine and 2,N-dimethyl amino 1-chloropropane are the initial substrate. So here when they will fuse together, the promethazine derivative will form, which reacts with hydrochloric acid to give promethazine hydrochloride. So here you can see the complete reaction. Next section is about the drug name, IUPAC name, their medicinal use and adverse effects. See, IUPAC name is generally used in the competitive exam and short type questions during examination. See, most of the H1 antagonist drug, they are almost used in the allergic reaction. Okay, so if you forget about the medicinal use, just simply you remember that it is used in allergic conditions. Okay, so the common medicinal use for this H1 antagonist drugs are, they are used for the treatment of various type of allergy or allergic symptoms or allergic response. Okay, and their most common adverse effect is drowsiness or sleepiness and dry mouth. If you forget to write if you forget the adverse effect of these antihistaminic drugs, simply you can write that they will cause the drowsiness, dizziness and dry mouth, because this is the common adverse effect. Because these antihistaminic drugs, they decrease the secretions, because of that our mouth will become dry. So the common adverse effect is dry mouth, drowsiness, sleepiness and some kind of sedative effect is there. That is the common adverse effect. So here I have written about all the drugs which are mentioned in your syllabus. As per the syllabus I made this. So here first is diphenhydramine hydrochloride. This is the IUPAC name, and again medicinal use. It is used in various allergic conditions. It is also given as OTC. It is used in urticaria or seasonal rhinitis. Adverse effect is again drowsiness, and it should never be used with alcohol or CNS depressant drugs. Okay. Next is dimenhydrinate. It is used in nausea, in motion sickness. It also prevents the hyperemesis during pregnancy. During pregnancy, vomiting sensation is more, so it can be used for that purpose only. And adverse effect is dry mouth, drowsiness and sometimes headache. Next is doxylamine succinate. It is used for seasonal and seasonal allergy and nighttime sedatives. It can be used as a sedative during nighttime. And adverse effect is dry mouth, constipation, headache, blurred vision. And next drug is diphenylpyrrolene hydrochloride. It is again used in the allergic conditions and also used in skin allergy. Adverse effect is dry mouth, GIT disturbance, sometimes sweating, hypotension and sometimes dizziness also. Next drug is clemastine fumarate. It relieves the symptoms of allergy, hay fever and common cold. Adverse effect is again drowsiness, dizziness, headache, constipation, dry mouth. Next drug is triplenamine hydrochloride. Again it is used in the treatment of allergy and allergic symptoms, common cold, and their adverse effect is sleeping, dry mouth, difficulty in urination and headache. Next drug is chlorcyclazine hydrochloride. It is again used for allergic symptoms and sometimes it is used as an antiemetic. and adverse effect is dizziness, drowsiness, and sometimes they increase the mucosal secretion, the thickness of mucosal secretion in lungs. Okay, so that is the major adverse effect. Next drug is meclizine hydrochloride. This is meclizine hydrochloride. It is used in a motion sickness or vomiting sensation. Adverse effect is drowsiness, dry mouth, and blurred vision. Next drug is buclizine hydrochloride. Okay, so it is used as antiemetic, nausea, motion sickness. Adverse effect is drowsiness, dizziness, blurred vision, and weight gain also, and dry mouth. Next drug is chlorpheniramine maleate. It is used to control the symptoms of cold, allergy, and running nose, itchy throat, sneezing, and sometimes hay fever, which is caused due to the pollen grains. Okay. Adverse effect again, drowsiness, dry mouth, nausea, loss of appetite, constipation, and headache. Next is your trifluridine hydrochloride. The use is it relieves the symptoms of allergy, hay fever, and common cold symptoms. And the adverse effect is dry mouth, blurred vision, increase the urination, sometimes constipation, and sometimes you feel feeling nervous. Next drug is your phenidamine tartrate. It is used for the symptoms of common cold and allergies such as sneezing, itching, and skin rashes. The main adverse effect is drowsiness and sleepiness. So that is the major adverse effect. Next drug is promethazine hydrochloride. It is used in allergy, motion sickness, nausea, vomiting, and nightmares. Sometimes scary dreams in night. For that it is also used. Okay. And adverse effect is uncontrollable neck muscle pain, neck muscle contraction, and sometimes eyelid twitching. So sometime what happen, people they will continuously stare. So that is the adverse effect of this promethazine hydrochloride. Next drug is trimeprazine tartrate. It is used in the seasonal allergy, and major adverse effect is sedation, confusion, dryness of mouth, and painful urination. Next drug is cyproheptadine hydrochloride. Major uses, it is used in the hypersensitivity and seasonal allergies, and major adverse effect is sedation, confusion, and dryness of mouth. Okay. Next drug is azatidine maleate. This one, 16th. It is basically used for the treatment of symptoms of allergy and symptoms of common cold, and the adverse effect is dizziness and drowsiness. Next drug is estimazole. It is used to treat the allergic symptoms. Adverse effect is again drowsiness, dizziness, abdominal pain, dry mouth, dry skin, and increased in appetite. Next drug is loratadine. Its use is it relieves the nasal and non-nasal symptoms of seasonal allergy. Okay. And adverse effect is headache, dry mouth, nosebleed, sore throat, and sometimes mouth sore, and nervousness or weakness. Next is cetirizine. This is one of the most common anti-allergic drug. It gives temporary relief from running nose, sneezing, hay fever, and it is also used for upper respiratory tract allergies. Adverse effect is sleepiness, dizziness, headache, dry mouth, sometimes stomach pain or nausea. Levocetirizine, it relieves the symptoms of allergic conditions and also used in skin allergy. Its adverse effect is drowsiness, dry mouth, tiredness. In children, sometimes it induces cough and fever also. Here their IUPAC names are written. So the last drug in this category as per your syllabus is cromolyn sodium, and this is the IUPAC name of cromolyn sodium. Structures are already given in chemical classification. Medicinal uses, it is used in bronchial asthma, allergic rhinitis, nausea, vomiting, and itchy skin. Adverse effect is mouth dryness, coughing, headache, and nasal itching. So this is about your H1 antihistaminic drugs. So further continuation of the unit 1. In this unit 1, the next topic is histamine H2 antagonist drug. Previously we discussed about the H1 antagonist drug. Now we will discuss about H2 antagonist drug. See, what is H2 antagonist drug? As we all know that there are 4 types of histamine receptor, H1, H2, H3 and H4. So these drugs which affect the H2 receptor or H2 histamine receptor are known as H2 antagonist drug. Means they will bind with histamine H2 receptor and they will antagonize the effect of histamine. So the drugs which bind with H2 receptor to antagonize the effect of histamine are known as H2 antagonist drugs. So here you can see the definition. The drugs that bind with histamine H2 receptor to antagonize the effect of histamine. And these drugs are also called as anti-ulcer drug or anti-secretory drugs. Okay, so basically they used to cure the ulcer in stomach and duodenal, means in stomach and intestine they will prevent the ulcer. So these drugs are used to treat the peptic ulcer disorders like GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disease, ZES, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, and they are also used to treat the gastric and duodenal ulcer. So basically this histamine H2 antagonist drug, they are anti-ulcer drug. Okay, so what are the reasons through which the ulcer can appear in stomach and intestine? See, one of the latest known reason is the presence of Helicobacter pylori, which is a gram-negative bacteria. It indirectly increase the secretion of H+ ion in the stomach. So that is why the acidic pH of stomach will increase more. See, in stomach acid is present in large amount to digest the food. Okay, so secretion of acid is not the problem. The problem is that if the protective mucosal layer is present in stomach cell, means the gastric cells are there on which a mucosal layer is there to prevent the effect of acid. So if that mucosal layer secretion will be less, then the acid which is present in the stomach will damage the outer layer of the gastric cells. That will cause the bleeding and that is known as ulcer. So basically it is the problem of less secretion or absence of mucosa in the gastric cells or in the stomach. So because of that, the acid which is present will destroy or damage the upper layer of the cell. Okay, so basically this H2 antagonist, they will decrease the HCl secretion or H+. H+ is the acidic ion. Okay, so H+ ion in the gastric cells. So that is why they will reduce the acidity or acidic medium in the stomach. So in this way they will prevent the ulcer formation or they will cure the ulcer, or in case if severe ulcer is there, so slowly they will reduce the concentration of acid and by the time the ulcer will get decreased. In gastric ulcer, generally the acid secretions are normal or less, but the deficiency of mucosal layer will contribute a major role to cause the ulcer, because if that mucosal layer is not present, that mucosal layer act as a protective layer on the gastric cell. If that mucosal layer will be absent, then the acid will damage the gastric layer. So because of that, the ulcer formation will take place. Okay, so another factor, as I already discussed, the presence of Helicobacter pylori, and it is a gram-negative bacteria. It also contribute in the ulcer formation. Okay, so here the main mechanism of anti-ulcer drug is to control the gastric acid secretion, and due to which there is an increase in mucosal secretion. Okay, so now the question arises that from where this acid get released. So the parietal cells, these are the parietal cells which are present in the gastric epithelial cells, they secrete the acid. So The parietal cell secretes the acid present in the gastric epithelial cell. So this is the brief introduction about the anti-ulcer drug and how the ulcer form and what are the causative agents for ulcer formation in stomach and intestine. Let's see the chemical classification of H2 antagonist drug. First category is complete H2 receptor antagonist. Okay, means they will completely bind with H2 receptors. So example of those drug is cimetidine. This is the structure of cimetidine and this is the IUPAC name of cimetidine. Sometime it may ask in a competitive exams like GPAT. So if it is visible, you can see cimetidine, its chemical structure and the IUPAC nomenclature. Next example is famotidine. Again, this is the structure of famotidine and this is the IUPAC nomenclature of famotidine. Another example in this complete H2 receptor agonist is ranitidine. So this is the structure of ranitidine and the IUPAC nomenclature for ranitidine. Another example is butyramide. Okay, so this is the structure of butyramide, and so here you can see the structure of butyramide. Next category is partial H2 receptor antagonist, means they will not completely block the H2 receptor. Instead of that, they will bind partially with H2 receptors, that is histamine H2 receptor. Example is N-guanyl histamine, and this is the structure of N-guanyl histamine. As per your syllabus, the synthesis of cimetidine is mentioned here. So you can see the cimetidine, it is synthesized by ethyl 5-methyl imidazole carboxylate. So this is the initial substrate to form the cimetidine, which is H2 antagonist. So in the presence of LiLH4, okay, and after that here you can see step by step the synthesis of cimetidine. Now let's see the mechanism of action through which these H2 receptor antagonist drug they will work. So I have explained this mechanism in a very simple way. This is the cell layer, this is the upper layer and this is the end of the cell. Okay, so here you can see there are three types of receptor. First is H2 receptor, second is gastrin receptor, and third is muscarinic receptor. First I will explain that how this histamine it triggered the secretion of HCl. After that I will explain that how the H2 receptor antagonist drug they will work. Per layer of cell, it has H2 receptor, gastrin receptor and muscarinic receptor. Okay, so at H2 receptor the histamine will bind, at gastrin receptor the gastrin will bind, at muscarinic receptor the acetylcholine will bind. So when the histamine it attach with H2 receptor, then they will couple and they will trigger adenylate cyclase. So here when this histamine receptor it bind with H2 receptor, it coupled and they will stimulate adenylate cyclase. Then this adenylate cyclase it increases the CAMP. This will stimulate the hydrogen potassium ATPase channel which is present at this bottom side of the cell. So this H2 receptor and histamine they coupled and ultimately they stimulate the H plus K plus ATPase channel. See, when this channel will open, the H plus ion which is present in the cell, it will release out proton or hydrogen ion. They are acidic in nature, or the compound which release the H plus ion is acid. So that is why the H plus ion they release, and which is called as acid release in the stomach, because this H plus K plus hydrogen potassium ATPase channel will be stimulated by this increased level of CAMP, due to which the hydrogen which is present inside the cell will go outside, and to maintain the electrode potential, means to maintain the charge balance inside the cell, the same amount of potassium will enter inside the cell. Okay, to maintain that charge, the amount of hydrogen will go in the stomach, the same amount of potassium will enter inside the cell. So this is the case when H2 receptor bind with histamine. Apart from that, gastrin and acetylcholine, they will also modulate the release of calcium ion. So indirectly they will affect the H plus K plus ATPase channel, means hydrogen potassium ATPase channel. So these gastrin and acetylcholine, they will also enhance or stimulate this hydrogen potassium channel. How? By releasing this calcium ion. They will trigger this channel. So ultimately, histamine, gastrin and acetylcholine, they will increase the acid secretion in the stomach. This is the mechanism when histamine bind with H2 receptor and it will release the H plus ion in the stomach. So for H2 receptor antagonist, the main target is this receptor. So the H2 receptor antagonist drug, they will bind with this H2 receptor. They will prevent the binding of histamine with H2 receptor. If this histamine does not bind with H2 receptor, ultimately this channel will not stimulate. The hydrogen potassium ATPase channel will not be stimulated. So there will be no influx of potassium ion and efflux of hydrogen ion. So ultimately the release of H plus ion will be prevented. So when instead of histamine, these H2 receptor antagonists, they will bind, ultimately they will inhibit the opening of this channel. Indirectly they are inhibiting the opening of this H plus K plus ATPase channel. Means they are preventing the exchange of hydrogen and the potassium ion. Simple. So this is the mechanism of action for H2 receptor antagonist. So they will inhibit the binding of histamine with this H2 receptor, which trigger this hydrogen potassium ATPase channel. So in this way, these drugs, they prevent the release of H plus ion in the stomach. And this H2 receptor antagonist mechanism of action, it is applicable to all the drugs which come under this category. So in examination, even if they will ask the drugs apart from the drug which is given for synthesis, then also you can write this common mechanism of action. So simply this mechanism of action is applicable for H2 receptor antagonist drug. Let's see the uses and adverse effect of H2 receptor antagonist drug. First example is cimetidine, and its medicinal use is, it is used in gastric and intestinal ulcer and GERD. What is GERD? As I already told you, it is gastroesophageal reflux disease. And in case of heartburn doesn't mean that our heart really get burned or some acid secretion in heart. It is simply that we feel a burning sensation around the heart. Adverse effect is gynecomastia. See, this is very important for GPAT. Mostly in GPAT, many times it is asked about the major adverse effect of cimetidine. That is gynecomastia, means the introduction of female characteristics in male. Next drug is famotidine. It is used for the short-term treatment of duodenal and gastric ulcer. It is also used in GERD. ZES. ZES is Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. The major side effect is it increase the prolactin level. Next example is ranitidine. Ranitidine, it is used for the treatment of duodenal ulcer, GERD and gastric ulcer. The adverse effects are headache, stomach cramp, drowsiness and constipation. Let's discuss the SAR of H2 receptor antagonist drug. The major structure is this, which is repeated in all those structure. That is the general structure which is present in H2 receptor antagonist drug. So here you can see this is the common structure, and numbering is like that. This nitrogen get first number, second number, third, fourth and fifth, and here chain and nitrogen. So this is the basic structure for H2 receptor antagonist drug. First point is presence of imidazole structure. So here the presence of imidazole structure is very important for receptor binding. So this imidazole structure, presence of this structure is important for receptor action, means receptor binding will be more. Now second point is imidazole ring exists in two resonance structure. Here you can see two resonating form is there, but structure 1 will produce maximum activity. The structure 1 and structure 2. In these two structure, the structure 1 will produce maximum activity in these two resonance form. Next point, R. At position 4. R can be replaced or substituted with methyl group to give potent compound. Means if you will substitute R with methyl group, you will get a H2 receptor antagonist drug. Means the potency will be very high. Next point, here chain is there. 4 carbon chain is there. Means CH2 4. 4 means the butyl chain, the butane chain. If this chain is having 4 carbon, then it will give optimum activity. So if 4 carbon chain is there here, then you will get optimum activity. Next, presence of thio group. Here we are talking about the chain. If in the chain any thio linkage is there, or any thio means sulfur, double bond sulfur. If in the chain carbon with double bond sulfur it is present, will increase the activity. If the carbon with sulfur, double bond sulfur is present in between carbon chain, then the activity will increase. And next point, if you will lower this carbon chain less than 4, the activity will decrease. So for optimum activity, 4 carbon chain must be there. 4 carbon atom in that chain, or the 4 alkyl group, the 4 methyl group should be there in the chain for good activity. If less number of methyl group is there, then the activity will get decreased. And the last point is the presence of terminal nitrogen is important for the activity. If at the terminal side an H2 group is there, or nitrogen with some other group is there, means terminal means at the end. At the end, if nitrogen is there or NH2 group is there, then also it increases the H2 receptor antagonist activity. So this is the SAR of H2 receptor antagonist drugs. So next topic is gastric proton pump inhibitors. They are also come under the category of anti-ulcer drugs. So they are also used for the treatment of ulcer. These drugs used to treat the gastric and duodenal ulcer, same like H2 receptor antagonist drug, but their mechanism of action is different from the H2 receptor antagonist. But the pharmacological action is same. They will decrease the secretion of acid or H plus ion. Means they will act in different manner, but the effect will be the same pharmacological effect, that they will decrease the acid secretion. So let's see their mechanism of action in a very simple manner. Histamine bind with H2 receptor, gastrin and acetylcholine. With gastrin will bind with gastrin receptor, acetylcholine will bind with muscarinic receptor. So ultimately they will activate the H plus K plus ATPase channel. As we already discussed in H2 receptor antagonist, they will activate this proton potassium ATPase channel, and that will release the H plus ion in exchange of potassium ion, right? So these histamine when bind with H2 receptor, gastrin bind with gastrin receptor, acetylcholine bind with muscarinic receptor. So they will ultimately stimulate this hydrogen potassium ATPase channel, which release the H plus ion in exchange of potassium ion. So ultimately, what is the action of proton pump inhibitors? They will inhibit this H plus K plus ATPase channel. These proton pump inhibitor. The mechanism of action for proton pump inhibitor. Again, I will explain you with the help of the previous mechanism of action of H2 receptor antagonist. Here you can see the mechanism. As we already discussed that histamine when bind with H2 receptor, gastrin with gastrin receptor, acetylcholine with muscarinic receptor. So ultimately they will increase the CMP concentration and it stimulate this H plus K plus ATPase channel. Okay, so here H plus will be released and K plus will enter inside the mast cell. So what happened? This ATPase channel will be inhibited by the proton pump inhibitor. So here you can see this is the H2 receptor antagonist drug. They will work on this H2 receptor, and this proton pump inhibitor, they will inhibit this channel. But ultimately the pharmacology is same. They will inhibit the release of H plus ion. So ultimately the aim for H2 receptor antagonist and proton pump inhibitor is same. Both will inhibit the release of H plus ion, although they act on different receptor. Here H2 receptor antagonist will act on H2 receptor, and proton pump inhibitor will act on this proton potassium ATPase channel. They will affect the release of H plus ion in the stomach cell. So that is the mechanism of action for proton pump inhibitor, and that is for H2 receptor antagonist. So here you can see the mechanism of action of proton pump inhibitors. We already discussed about that. Let's see the chemical classification of these proton pump inhibitors. So this chemical classification is according to the syllabus mentioned. So the chemical classification of proton pump inhibitors, and the first category, the first drug is omeprazole. This is the brand name Losec. Omeprazole is available in the name of Losec in the market. So this is the structure of omeprazole, and this is the IUPAC nomenclature for omeprazole. It is used in GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, and gastric and duodenal ulcer, and also in heartburn. Okay. The major adverse effect is headache, abdominal pain. So this is the omeprazole. Its brand name Losec. Its chemical structure, use, and adverse effect. Next drug is lansoprazole, and its brand name is Prevacid. It is available in the market as Prevacid. Okay. So this is the chemical structure of lansoprazole. Okay. And again the use is GERD. It is used in the treatment of GERD, gastroesophageal reflux disease, gastric and duodenal ulcer, and Zollinger-Ellison syndrome, ZES. Adverse effect is again headache, diarrhea, constipation, nausea, and stomach pain. Next drug is pantoprazole, and it is available in market as Protonix. This is the chemical structure of pantoprazole, and use again, it is used in the treatment of ZES and erosive esophageal route. Okay, means when there is a damage in esophagus, then it is also used. Adverse effect is headache and diarrhea. That is the major adverse effect. Next drug is Rabiprazole, and its brand name is Aciphex, ACIPHEX. And this is the chemical structure of Rabiprazole, and this is the IUPAC nomenclature for Rabiprazole. It is used in duodenal ulcer, ZES, eradication of H. pylori, that is Helicobacter pylori. So you can see the major use is in the treatment of duodenal and gastric ulcer, GERD, that is gastroesophageal reflux disease, and ZES, Zollinger-Ellison syndrome. And their major adverse effect is headache, abdominal pain, sometimes constipation, nausea, or diarrhea. Okay, so this is about the chemical classification. Next is SAR of proton pump inhibitors. So here you can see the common structure which is present in all the proton pump inhibitor. The structure of proton pump inhibitors are basically divided into three parts. First is pyridine ring. Second is the linkage, this S double bond O, and this alkyl chain. So first part is pyridine. Second part is linkage, benzimidazole ring. This is third part is benzimidazole ring, and the numbering has been done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So first point is the presence of sulfinyl connecting group between pyridine and the benzimidazole is essential for the biological activity. That is the first point. First point means the presence of this S double bond O group. This is the linkage between this pyridine ring and the benzimidazole. So that is necessary for the biological activity. That is the first point. Second point is substitution of methoxy group on the fifth position of benzimidazole. So here the substitution of methoxy group, OCH3 group. Here the substitution of methoxy group or OCH3 group will increase the activity. So here if we will substitute OCH3 group, the activity will increase. Next, here the presence of nitrogen in pyridine ring, it increases the nucleophilic character. Means it will make the compound prone for nucleophilic attack. Okay, so this presence of nitrogen induce the nucleophilic character. Here you can see the pyridine in which nitrogen atom is there, it increase the nucleophilicity of the nucleus. So that is the third point. Next, fourth point, presence of 5-fluoroalkoxy. Means at fifth position, here at fifth position, if the 5-fluoroalkoxy group is present here at this position, here in the benzimidazole, in the benzimidazole ring, benzimidazole ring, in benzimidazole ring, if 5-fluoroalkoxy group is present, here if it is present, it increases the lipophilicity and it will increase the proton pump inhibitor activity also. If here the presence of CF3 or fluoroalkoxy group here, then it will increase the activity. Next, the presence of methoxy group at fourth position in pyridine ring. Here at fourth position, if methoxy group is present, here at fourth position, if OCH3 group is present, it increases the activity. Okay, so if OCH3 group is substituted here, then it will increase the proton pump inhibitor activity. Next, the presence of methyl group at third position in pyridine ring. If here CH3 group is there, at this position, if CH3 group is there, then also it increases the activity. So here the presence of CH3 group will increase the activity. Next, linkage CH2. If N means one alkyl group is present, it will show maximum activity. Means if CH2 group is there, only single CH2 group is there, then it will produce the maximum activity. Okay, so here if CH2 is 1, then it will give the maximum activity. If you will increase this chain or 2 CH2 group or 3 CH2 group, the activity will get decrease. Okay. Next, the electron withdrawing group increases the activity and electron donating group decreases the activity if they are substituted at fifth position of benzimidazole moiety. Okay, if here any electron withdrawing group is there, the activity will increase. If here any electron donating group is there, the activity will get decreased. So this is the last point. Presence of electron withdrawing group increases the activity at fifth position. Presence of electron donating group decreases the activity at fifth position. If at this position the electron withdrawing group will increase activity, and if electron donating group is there, it decreases the activity. I hope this video will clear your doubt, and if you like this video, then subscribe my channel and share it with other students. So I hope you like my video. Thank you for watching my video.